Grace moved to a new town with her Aunt Rose. They lived in a small, quiet house near a big park. Grace missed her old friends, but she was happy to start fresh. Aunt Rose promised to help her find a job soon. One bright morning, Grace put on her best dress and walked around town. She wanted to find work and meet new people. She smiled at everyone she saw and said hello. Many people smiled back because Grace was friendly and sweet. As she passed the bakery, the sweet smell of bread filled the air. Grace stopped and looked inside. She saw a woman cleaning the floor and a boy behind the counter giving bread to an old man. The boy looked about her age and had a kind face. Grace walked in and asked, "Excuse me, do you need help here?" The woman looked up and said, "Can you clean and carry trays?" Grace nodded quickly. "Yes, ma'am, I can do anything." "Good," the woman smiled. "Come tomorrow at 7 a.m. My name is Mrs. Bella. This is my son, Jack." Grace turned to Jack and smiled. He smiled back and said, "Welcome, Grace." At that moment, something warm grew in her heart, but she didn't know why. The next morning, Grace woke up early. She brushed her hair, wore her clean dress, and walked to the bakery. She wanted to do her best. When she got there, Mrs. Bella was already sweeping the floor. "Good morning," Grace said with a smile. "Good morning, dear," Mrs. Bella replied. "Start by wiping the tables." Jack came out from the back room holding a tray of fresh bread. "Hi, Grace," he said. "Ready for your first day?" Grace smiled. "Yes, I'm ready." They worked side by side all morning. Jack was kind and funny. He helped her when she didn't know what to do. Grace liked working with him. The bakery was busy, but she didn't feel tired. At lunchtime, Jack gave Grace a soft bun and a drink. "You worked hard today," he said. "Thank you," Grace replied. "You and your mom are very nice." Jack looked down for a second, then said, "She's not always what she seems." Grace was confused. "What do you mean?" she asked. Jack quickly smiled again and said, "Don't worry about it." Then he walked back to the kitchen. Grace watched him and thought, "There's something strange about this boy." 3 days later, a storm came. The rain was heavy and the sky was dark. Grace still went to work with her umbrella. When she got to the bakery, she was wet, but she was not late. Mrs. Bella smiled and handed her a towel. The bakery was quiet because of the rain. Grace was mopping the floor when she saw a woman outside. The woman was very wet and looked cold. She wore torn clothes and had no shoes. Grace ran to the door and opened it. "Come inside, please," Grace said kindly. The woman looked surprised. "Are you sure?" she asked. "Yes," Grace said. "You can sit near the oven. It's warm there." The woman smiled and walked in slowly. Jack came out from the back and saw the woman. His eyes grew wide, but he quickly looked away. Grace noticed but didn't say anything. Mrs. Bella walked in, saw the woman, and frowned. She didn't look happy. "Grace," Mrs. Bella said sharply, "why is this woman here?" Grace answered softly. "She was cold and wet. I didn't want her to freeze outside." Mrs. Bella didn't reply. She looked at the woman for a long time, then turned and walked away. The old woman sat quietly near the oven. Grace gave her some warm bread and tea. The woman smiled and said, "You are kind, my dear. Not many people help strangers like you." Grace smiled back. "I believe everyone deserves kindness." The woman looked at her closely and asked, "What is your name, child?" "My name is Grace," she replied. "I work here in the bakery." Jack walked by again. This time the old woman stared at him for a long time. "That boy," she said softly. "He looks like someone I once knew." Grace looked at her, surprised. "Really?" The woman nodded slowly. "Yes, but people change, and some people wear masks to hide who they really are." Grace didn't understand what the woman meant. She looked at Jack, who was now pretending to clean the counter. When the bakery closed, Mrs. Bella came out and told the woman, "You must leave now." Grace was shocked. "But it's still raining," she said. "She can stay a little longer." Mrs. Bella frowned. This is not a shelter, Grace. She has to go. Grace walked outside with the old woman, holding her umbrella over her head. The rain was still falling hard. I'm so sorry, Grace said. I wish you had a place to stay. The old woman smiled gently. You have done enough, my child, she said. But be careful. Not everyone is who they say they are. Grace looked confused. What do you mean? The woman reached into her wet bag and pulled out a small note. Give this to the boy, she said. He will understand. Grace took the note and looked at the woman with wide eyes. Do you know Jack? The woman only smiled, then slowly walked away into the rain. The next morning, Grace saw Jack early at the bakery. She gave him the note. Jack's hands shook as he read it. His face changed. Where did you get this? He asked quickly. Grace was surprised. From the woman yesterday. Jack folded the note fast and put it in his pocket. Don't tell anyone she gave it to you, he whispered. Please, Grace, just forget you saw her. Grace stared at him. What is Jack hiding? She thought. That night, Grace couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the notes and the old woman. Why was Jack so scared? What did the note say? She wanted to ask, but she didn't want to break his trust. The next day at the bakery, Jack was quiet. He didn't joke like he used to. At lunchtime, he asked Grace to meet him behind the bakery. I want to tell you something, he said. Grace followed him to the back where no one could hear them. Jack looked nervous. That woman you helped, she's not just any stranger, he said. She's someone very close to me. Grace listened closely. Jack looked at the ground and whispered, She's my real mother. Grace gasped. What? But I thought Mrs. Bella was your mom. Jack nodded. She raised me, but she's not my birth mother. So why did she lie? Grace asked. Jack sighed. Because she wanted to keep me away from my real mom. She said my mother was poor and useless. But now I know she's not a bad person. She just had a hard life. Grace was quiet for a moment. Her heart was beating fast. She looked at Jack and said softly, Why didn't you tell me before? Jack sat down on a wooden box and held his hands together. I didn't know how to say it, he said. Mrs. Bella took me in when I was very small. She gave me food, clothes, and sent me to school. But she told me my real mother left me because she didn't want me. I believed her for years. Grace sat beside him. The back of the bakery was quiet except for the sound of birds in the trees. Jack continued. But last year, I found some old papers in Mrs. Bella's room. One was a letter. It was from my real mother. She didn't leave me because she wanted to. She was very sick back then and didn't have money to take care of me. She begged Mrs. Bella to help just for a little while, but Mrs. Bella never gave me back. She told people I was her son. Grace's eyes were wide. She didn't know what to say. So, that woman really is your mom? Jack nodded slowly. Yes, and that note she gave you. It had a tiny drawing I made when I was little. She kept it all these years. Only my real mom would have that. Now I know the truth. She came to see me, but I didn't know how to act. I was scared, I was angry, but mostly I felt sad. Grace gently placed her hand on his. Jack, I think your mother still loves you very much. She came in the rain just to see you. She didn't shout, she didn't cry, she just looked at you with love. That kind of heart is special. Jack's eyes grew wet. I want to see her again. I want to say sorry. I want to call her mom, but I'm afraid Mrs. Bella won't let me. Grace stood up. Then we must find her, she said. We will talk to her together. Maybe she's still in town. Maybe she's waiting for you. But you have to be brave, Jack. This is your mother. Don't let fear stop you. Jack looked up at her, and for the first time in a long while, he smiled. Not a fake one, but a true smile filled with hope. The next morning, Grace and Jack met early before work. The sun was just rising, and the sky was painted with orange and yellow. Grace had packed a small bag with water and bread, just in case we walk far. she said with a smile. Jack was quiet, but there was a light in his eyes. He wanted to find his real mother, the woman who waited years just to see his face. They told Mrs. Bella they needed to deliver something to a customer and quickly left the bakery. They started their search at the bus stop near the bakery. She may have waited here after the rain, Jack said. They asked the bus driver, and he remembered a tired old woman sitting on the bench the day before. She didn't speak much, he said, but she looked like she had nowhere to go. Jack felt a lump in his throat. That was his mother. She had been so close, yet he had done nothing. The driver pointed them to a shelter at the edge of town. Sometimes people without homes go there to sleep, he said. Grace and Jack rushed to the shelter. It was a small building with a metal roof and wooden doors. Inside, a kind woman welcomed them. When they asked about the old woman, she smiled and said, "Yes, she stayed here last night. She was very quiet and said she was looking for someone. She left early this morning and walked toward the old train station." Without wasting time, Grace and Jack walked fast to the train station. Jack's heart was beating hard in his chest. The station was quiet and a bit broken down. Only a few people were there, sitting on benches and waiting. Then Jack saw her. She was sitting alone, holding a small cloth bag in her lap. Her eyes were tired and her hands were folded tightly, but when she looked up and saw Jack, she froze. Jack took slow steps forward. "Mom," he said softly. The old woman stood up quickly, her hands shaking. "Jack?" Her voice cracked. Jack ran to her and hugged her tightly. For the first time in his life, he felt the love of a mother who had waited so long for this moment. She hugged him back, tears falling from her eyes. Grace watched from a short distance, her heart full. It was a moment of love, truth, and healing. Jack and his real mother sat together on a bench at the train station, holding hands like they never wanted to let go. Grace brought them some bread and water from her bag. "Thank you," Jack's mother said with a warm smile. Her name was Martha. She looked at Jack and said, "You've grown into a fine young man. I am so proud of you." Jack's eyes filled with tears. "I thought you left me. I didn't know you were sick. Mrs. Bella told me you didn't want me." Martha shook her head slowly. "That's not true, my son. I was very poor and sick. I had no job and no home. I gave you to Mrs. Bella to care for, just for a little while. I thought she would help until I got better. But when I came back for you, she pushed me away. She said you didn't need me anymore." Jack's fists tightened. He looked angry and hurt. Why would she lie to both of us? Grace sat beside them and said softly, "Maybe she didn't want to lose you. Maybe she wanted you to believe she was the only one who loved you. But a lie is still a lie." Jack nodded. "She raised me, yes, but she also stole my real mother's chance to be with me." Martha looked down. "I begged her many times, Jack. I even sent letters, but she never replied, so I waited. I hoped you would find me one day." Jack stood up slowly. "She must know the truth has come out by now, or must come out by now. We left the bakery for hours. She will be waiting. But I'm not afraid anymore. We need to face her together." Martha nodded, her eyes shining. Grace stood too. "Let's go. The longer we wait, the more lies she might tell." The three of them walked back to the bakery in silence, each step heavy with emotion. When they arrived, Mrs. Bella was standing outside. She looked worried until she saw who was with Jack. Her face turned cold. "So, you found her," she said, crossing her arms. Jack walked up to her with a strong voice. "Yes, I found my mother, and I know everything now." Jack stood tall in front of Mrs. Bella. His voice was calm, but his eyes were sharp. "Why did you lie to me?" he asked. "Why did you tell me my mother didn't want me? She cried for me. She waited for me. You took me from her." Mrs. Bella looked down for a moment, then lifted her chin. "I gave you a better life. She had nothing, and I gave you everything." "Everything?" Jack's voice rose. You gave me food and a bed, yes, but you stole the truth. You made me believe I was unwanted. You made my mother suffer. That is not love. That is control. Mrs. Bella's hands trembled. I was afraid, she whispered. Afraid you would leave me and forget me. Her eyes filled with tears, but Jack's heart was firm. You should have trusted me. You didn't need to lie. Martha stepped forward, her voice soft but strong. I don't hate you, Bella. I thank you for raising my son. But you had no right to keep him from me. He needed to know the truth. A mother never forgets her child. Mrs. Bella looked at Martha, tears now streaming down her cheeks. I didn't know how to fix it. The lie grew too big. I thought if I told the truth, I would lose him forever. Grace stood between them all. But lies never protect love. They only break it, she said. You both love Jack in your own ways, but now it's time for healing, not more pain. Jack turned to Mrs. Bella. You will always be part of my story, but from now on, I live in truth with both my mothers, not just one. Mrs. Bella broke down and cried, I'm sorry, Jack. I'm so sorry. Jack hugged her gently. I forgive you, he said, but things will change. I'm no longer a little boy. I will make my own choices. Martha reached out and joined the hug. Grace stood back and smiled softly. A family was being rebuilt, not by lies, but by truth. A few days passed after the big truth came out. Things at the bakery felt different. Mrs. Bella was quiet but kinder. She let Martha come every morning to sit with Jack and Grace while they worked. Sometimes she even brought tea for everyone. The bakery was no longer just a place of work, it was a place of healing. One afternoon, Jack pulled Grace aside. Can we talk? He asked. She nodded. They sat outside on a wooden bench under a big mango tree. The wind was soft and the air smelled sweet. Jack looked nervous. I've been thinking a lot lately, he said, about life, about family, and about you. Grace tilted her head, curious. Jack smiled shyly. You were the one who opened the door to my real mother. You gave me a new life just by being kind, and every day I feel lucky to have met you. Grace blushed. She looked down at her hands and smiled. Jack, you're a good person. I'm happy I met you too. Jack reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Inside was a beautiful silver ring with a tiny heart on it. I know we're still young, he said softly, but I want to ask, will you be my best friend forever? And maybe, one day, my wife? Grace gasped. She didn't expect this. Her eyes filled with happy tears. Yes, Jack, she said with a big smile. You have my heart. They hugged gently, both feeling warm inside. Just then, Martha and Mrs. Bella peeked from the door and smiled too. Two mothers, one by birth and one by choice, watched their son begin a new chapter filled with truth, love, and kindness. 1 month later, the bakery was filled with the smell of cake and flowers. There were balloons at the door and soft music played from a small radio. People from the town came smiling and clapping. It was a special day. Jack and Grace were having a friendship celebration. They weren't getting married yet, but they wanted to thank everyone who had helped them grow. Grace wore a soft yellow dress, and her hair was tied in a pretty ribbon. Jack wore a clean white shirt and brown trousers. He looked proud, standing between his two mothers. Martha and Mrs. Bella were both smiling, sitting side by side. Their hearts had healed, and now they shared a son without anger or lies. There were cupcakes for the children, tea for the adults, and laughter in every corner. Grace gave a little speech. Kindness changes everything, she said. I came to this town with nothing, but now I have a job, a family, and a best friend. I thank God for bringing Jack and his mothers into my life. Jack also spoke. I used to be afraid of the truth, but now I know the truth made me free. Thank you, Grace, for teaching me how to love and forgive. You're not just my friend, you're my hero. Everyone clapped. Martha wiped her tears with a handkerchief. Mrs. Bella patted Jack's shoulder and nodded proudly. As the sun began to set, Grace and Jack sat together on the bench under the mango tree. They watched the sky turn orange and pink. Do you think our story will always stay special? Grace asked. Jack smiled and held her hand. Yes, he said, because our story was built with truth, love, and a little bit of cake. They both laughed as the wind gently blew through the trees and the stars began to shine. The end. Moral lessons. 1. Kindness can open doors. Grace helped a stranger without expecting anything in return. That simple act of kindness led to the truth being revealed and a broken family being restored. Real love is not about control, it's about trust and honesty. Mrs. Bella loved Jack, but her love was mixed with fear and control. True love allows people to know the truth and make their own choices. Forgiveness brings healing. Jack forgave both women in his life. His forgiveness allowed them to come together as a family and start a new chapter with peace. Thank you for listening. If you have enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share to friends and families so they can also enjoy. If you have not subscribed to this channel, what are you waiting for? Please subscribe and don't forget to hit the notification button so that you will be the first to be notified whenever we put up a new interesting stories like this. Thank you and see you in our next story.